Call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. I need a motion for the adoption of minutes, please.
Resolve that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on May 24th, 2022 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. All those in favor? And that's carried. Our delegation this evening has been moved to a future meeting, so we're going to move right into public hearings. We'll open the public hearing for variation PC 30-22. This is for CHB Development, Inc. This is 385-395 Bridge Road. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Anyone here to speak to the hearing for the variation PC 30-22? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be it resolved that the public hearing for variation PC 30-22 for CHB Development, Inc., 385-395 Bridge Road now be closed, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, council in front of you, you'll receive the report to council, and it's a request for variation for CHD Developments, Inc. So the applicant is wishing to do the following. He would like to vary the front yard requirement from the 7.5 meter requirement to be reduced to 3.6 meters. The south side yard requirement, when no attached garage or carport, shall be 4.6 meters. Would like to reduce that to 2.14 meters, and the rear yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to the 2.14 meters. So some of the background, he's been applying for the variation order. As I just mentioned, he'd like to build a duplex on the property in the future. It is an R2, two-family dwelling zone. In 2018 and 2019, just some of the background on it is that the below variations for that location were approved in the past for those civic addresses. The minutes are there for your reference. The sketch is there, and also the site plan for your reference as well. They were originally approved, but they have since expired. And the property, of course, as I mentioned, is an R2 two-family dwelling zone. The application has been circulated to various city departments. There have been no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within the 100-meter radius, and there's been no objections. So with that said, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of CHB Developments, Inc. to vary the following. Front yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 3.6 meters. South side yard requirement, when no attached garage or carport, shall be 4.6 meters, to reduce that to 2.14 meters, and that the rear yard requirement is 7.5 meters to be reduced to 2.14 meters. That's at the property known as 385-395 Bridge Road, which is legally described as lots 1-2, Plan 64742 in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll move right into committees. First up is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing to report in my committee report, but several items later on in the meeting.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. City Planning and Economic Development has nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Community Service Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from your Community Service Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Waterworks Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's nothing on the agenda, but I would like to welcome Norm Vignier here to the table. He is our new Deputy Fire Chief as of today. Norm has been with Manitoba Fire Service for 27 years and 14 years with the Portage la Prairie Fire Department. So congratulations, Norm, and welcome to the team.
And that concludes your
That
reports on
concludes
public
my
safety.
report.
Thank you. We have no deferred business this evening, so we'll move right into new business. Our first item is the 2021 audit financial statements. This is Finance Committee. Councillor Butts.
Thank you, Worship. So the issue tonight is to review and approve our audited consolidated financial statements for the 12-month period ending December 31st, 2021. So as you know, the City of Portage la Prairie's results support surpluses of $1.9 million for the general fund and $1.1 million for the utility fund, as previously reported to Council at its March 28th, 2022 meeting, and now finalized with the audited financial statements. So BDO has come in and basically confirmed those values, and basically I can report that we've had a very successful audit. For the general fund, the 2021 surplus will be allocated to the general infrastructure reserve to fund a large portion of the $3.6 million in capital requests for 2023 as identified in our 10-year capital plan. And for the utility side, those surpluses will be allocated to a new reserve fund to expand the water treatment plant. And this project is expected to attract significant government funding as it will support the expansion of wet industries and other economic development in our region. I think Council is aware that we've been working with the province and federal government on several projects, and we have heard that our region is viewed as the wet industry region in the province. So good to set aside some money for that. The city continues to be committed to its community by investing in the upgrade and addition of new tangible capital assets. $19.5 million in tangible assets were added in 2021. And obviously you've heard us talk a lot about all the infrastructure investments that we make, and a large portion of that money goes in that area. As I mentioned, BDO Canada have met with Council to review and answer any questions regarding the draft financial statements in further detail as per standard audit practices, and there's a couple of takeaways for our management team to deal with, but again, a very successful audit and happy to present these statements for approval. So once they are approved, we just have to let the BDO know that that has occurred, and they will then finalize the complete audit, which will then be posted on the website. So it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the audited consolidated financial statements for the 12 months ending December 31st, 2021.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Knox?
Yeah, I just would like to give some kudos to our finance team and our administration, as well as our finance committee. It was nice to talk to BDO and listen to the comments they had, and I think the one that stuck with me was that the comment that they had that they saw that our finance department really had a conscious caring for our community and the health of it financially, and I think that's nice to know that you're behind us doing that, so kudos to you. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. That concludes our new business. We have a number of items of old business. The first item is the second and third reading of amending bylaw 22-8738. This is for phase 2 of Saskatchewan Avenue West project. And this is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds.
Yeah, I think we'll do the 22-8737 phase 1 first, I think, but they're both the same.
That's a really good idea.
What these are, just for Council's reminder, is we've already approved the first reading of these borrowing bylaws, broken into 2 phases, as the Mayor mentioned, phase 1 and phase 2. After our first reading, then it goes to the municipal board to get their approval. Once that's obtained, then it comes back to us for second and third reading. So that's what these 2 bylaws are about here tonight. So dealing with the first one, as you know, we did commence Saskatchewan Avenue West project. That was to replace and upgrade utility infrastructure, water and sewer piping between 4th Street West and Elm Street. This project is funded under the ISIP program through a combination of federal, provincial government, and then up to $6 million of our own borrowing. So just for this portion, $842,000, and we are expecting to be completed this portion, phase 1, obviously in 2022. So it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the bylaw 22-8737 being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie to procure $842,000 in municipal borrowing for phase 1 of Saskatchewan Avenue West project be given second reading.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that bylaw 22-8737 be given third and final reading, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Now we'll do the second and third reading of amending bylaw 22-8738. This is for Phase 2, Saskatchewan Avenue West.
Thank you, Worship. So Phase 2, what does that represent? So that does represent new land drainage, LDS, and we've seen a lot of that work going on right now. Updating the paved avenue, installing climate-friendly infrastructure, sidewalks, and appropriate parking spaces. So just view Phase 2 as kind of the finishing product, if you will. Again, this project is funded under the ISIP program, again, federal provincial governments, and up to almost $14 million in municipal borrowing by the city. And the city's cost of Phase 1 is projected, Phase 2 is actually at 4.091. And this is going to take a little bit longer. And as I mentioned, you see the LDS being done. There'll be there's steps that need to be taken over the next number of years. We hope that this will be completed in 2024. So, the municipal board did give us approval, but there were some changes made to the bylaw document since first reading as requested by the province to better reflect the increase in borrowing from 10.5 to 13.73 under amending bylaw 218726 on December 31st. So it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that bylaw 22-8738, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie, to procure $4,091,000 in municipal borrowing for Phase 2 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project be given second reading.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that bylaw 22-8738 be given third and final reading, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Question, Councillor Knox?
No,
Comment?
sorry.
Oh, sorry? Any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. That concludes our council agenda for this evening. So council is adjourned at 6:12 p.m. and we'll move right into committee. Call committee to order at 6:12 p.m. First up is Finance and Property Committee, Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Worship. Not necessarily under my portfolio, but I did want to bring this item up for discussion at committee. Have been approached by several residents about the concerns of Crescent Lake so early on in the season. There seems to be quite a bit of debris, I don't know what we want to call it, growth, if you will, already, and quite commonly we have a stance that it's brought on by a lot of heat in our lake, and it produces growth, and then we go and deal with it. But this seems to be very early in the season, and so I just wanted to hear from management in terms of what we're doing about it. And I know there's been included in a spraying map here to kind of walk council through what actually happens, when it'll happen, and how we're dealing with this, and whether or not anyone else has the same concern. So really it's more of just to bring it to the forefront and hear from management and see if anyone else has any concerns. So I do turn it over to, I guess, Mr. Pito to kind of walk us through what the plan is and what they're observing on our lake.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. Through your worship to Councillor Buds, attached to the agenda is a map, and the map shows areas of Crescent Lake that we spray annually. Council budgets every year, administration budgets every year is approved by council to spray the lake with an aquatic herbicide. The aquatic herbicide kills off things like algae and some of the reeds that grow into the lake. When we apply that, it's usually early in the season, typically around this time. In fact, it started to be applied on the west side of the lake already. We have you'll see a large pontoon boat with arms that extend. And the chemical, is fairly expensive, so we try to use it where we get the most leverage in terms of killing algae and weeds that are close to public areas. So you'll see pretty much along our entire public walking path, we spray there, around the causeway, and then all the way around the lake in areas that have primarily public access has been the practice. We do spend in the neighborhood of about $80,000 a year on this aquatic herbicide. The last 2 years we have not used it traditionally. We haven't been able to use it because the water, frankly, has been too low to get the boat out. So we do have some supply built up into a reserve that we plan to use in future years. We don't use as much as, we try to use it as sparingly as possible because it is an aquatic herbicide and we are conscious of the environmental impact. We use about half the amount that could be used for the square footage, but we found that is effective enough to get an effective kill on the things that we are trying to remove to keep the lake clear. But I'd be open to any other questions, Councillor Buds, on that.
Or anyone else for that matter.
Counselor Knox?
So I'm curious, so if they spray, say today, when do you notice a change?
So what I've seen, and I might refer to Jocelyn on this, what I have seen is that it usually is a spray, and then you'll see the kill, and then it'll actually float to the surface, and then it'll eventually sink in terms of reeds traditionally. I think that process usually takes about 10 days, but that approximately correct?
And would it be something, I know it is, or like, I agree with Councillor Buds saying that we've always talked about it being from the heat, et cetera, but that's obviously not the case this year. Would it be something that you could do multiple times a year if it continues to grow and get bad again?
Through to your worship to Councillor Knox, traditionally we do it once a year, but like I said, this year we do have a little bit more surplus of the aquatic herbicide, so we could, if it became a problem later in the year. Traditionally, if you do it once and you get a good kill on the things that you're trying to remove, it traditionally lasts pretty effectively through the whole year, but it could be applied as needed.
Yeah, my other comment is I too would really like us to see what we can do about this, because I mean, we're promoting things like buying a new kayak launch and that sort of thing. We want to have a beautiful place for people to actually use those things, so.
Counselor Buds?
Yeah, so we say that we have an aquatic chemical, and you say that we're conscious of the environmental impact. Well, I would like to ask, if it's an approved aquatic chemical, shouldn't matter the rate that we're using. That's just something that we as a city feel like we want to use half rate. Could you clarify that? Because we wouldn't actually be using an environmentally invasive chemical. We wouldn't be allowed to do that. So is that just a decision we've made just to say that we want to be using half rate?
So through to your worship to Councillor Buds, in terms of environmental considerations, you're absolutely correct. The chemical is approved. The aquatic herbicide is approved to use in waterways, so that's not a consideration. It's also a financial consideration in terms of the cost of the chemical, because it is an expensive chemical. So we try to use what we find. We try to find a balance of how much we need to use to get the right result that we're looking for into the lake. So we could use substantially more. But we've found the amount that we're using seems to get the effect we're looking for, and that has both, I think, environmental and financial benefits to the organization. Your worship, I believe, did you have a comment, Jocelyn? Sorry.
I just wanted to mention that when you were asking about multiple applications, it's most effective in early growth. It's not as effective in established weeds. So that's why we like to get it early in the spring as we can.
Sorry, one more thing, because I'm big on, we spend a lot of money on our causeway. We spend a lot of money promoting ourselves, and so this it can be very distasteful, and especially if we have a way to control it. And so if we're looking at this map, water flow enters on left, the moderate amount of water flow. I understand. We pump in there, goes through and comes out to the right. Correct? Yes. So we must be getting some drift, because there is quite a bit of, although we don't spray in the bottom right-hand corner of our map, there is a lot of concentration of growth in that corner where we're not spraying. Now, I know that you'd said a little bit about, we do public access ways, but if it's drifting, why are we not doing the whole lake?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're spraying on something that is not static. If that make any sense. I'm just looking for some rationale as to, I know it costs money, but it costs money to do a lot of things, to cut the grass in our city. It costs money to keep the lights on, and it costs money to keep our Crescent Lake looking good. Then we should be spending the money on it. And so I just want a little bit more understanding as to why we like to put it into boxes when in reality, it's not the way a lake works.
Through your worship to Councillor Buds, I think traditionally we've been fighting more of a reeds battle, and you've seen that growth where you spray and kill the reeds, and then, of course, yeah, you're right, that you do have a flow through the lake that does move it. But this year we're seeing more of a static algae, for lack of a better term, that I think the aquatic herbicide will have an effect on. You're right, that does have a flow, and more so than Reed's did, obviously. So it does reach that. We have basically taken the budget that we've had for aquatic herbicide, and we've tried to get the most leverage we could out of it. If council is interested in increasing that area in terms of spray, that's something we could definitely budget for future years. We are in an advantageous position, I would say, this year because we have purchased the chemical in prior years and have, for lack of a better term, a stockpile, that we could increase the spray area, but that if that was the direction from council, we could definitely review that.
Thank you. So I would like to make that recommendation, Your Worship, that we challenge management to come back with a plan to spray more of our lake with our surplus chemical.
Any further questions or comments on?
My comment is, I just agree with that. I'd like to see the whole lake sprayed.
So that'll be a takeaway to bring back then?
That's probably, since it's not a particular governance issue, perhaps that administration just put together just a map and circulate to the council by email and just to indicate which, that would probably be just something we could follow
Perfect.
up with.
Yep.
We can do that then.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes my committee report.
Thank
Nothing related to finance, except spending more money.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. City Planning Economic Development Committee has nothing on the committee portion tonight.
And Community Service Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Worship. Nothing from your Community Services Committee tonight.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Waterworks Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The city has won an award. All municipalities that are members of the Manitoba Good Roads Association are automatically entered into the MGRA annual Urban Beautification Contest in the class that corresponds with their population. The city of Portage la Prairie was recently the recipient of the 2021 award, which is called the Clarion Hotel and Suites Brandon Shield Award for urban centers with populations of 7,500 or more. Municipalities are judged in categories such as signage, traffic control, commercial areas, residential areas, public buildings and facilities, and recreation and tourism. So winning this award really says a lot about our city. The city's nomination for the Manitoba Good Roads Association Best Urban Home Grounds Competition for populations over 7,500 was also the winner. The Burgess Shield plaque will be presented to the homeowners this week, so watch for more details in the upcoming days. And perhaps following committee, we could get a photo with our awards.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Espy. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Worship. Your Public Safety Committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. And committee is adjourned at 6:23 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.